Bomani,
This is Samir.
and we're doing the ARS Virtual Studio SIG sprint video for Sprint 4. So in this sprint, we went ahead and built a couple different prototypes. The first one that we did to address high-level planning deficiencies was this survey. Um, this survey basically goes through a bunch of different questions that we pulled from a paper about socially shared planning. And we asked two testers to go through and fill out this whole survey for for a story on their sprint plan. We found that testers did like we found that testers did actually produce like better tasks as they were writing after kind of being primed by these questions, but they didn't really like going through all the effort that it took to fill it out. And they also liked the best practices sections here because it was pretty low effort and reminded them of some things that they may have forgotten to do.
So after we did that prototype, we realized there's a lot of overhead, so we kind of cut it down to our two main questions. So adding on to our sprint planning video sheet, our sprint planning sheet. So if you type in a story, so if you do user testing, it puts the story down, and then it asks two questions underneath about the story. So the two questions are, what is the purpose of the story, to make sure like the story makes sense, and then what is the outcome of the story. So like really knowing like what your deliverable is at the end of the story. We also added a column that says points required. So if you were 4 points, nothing would happen, but if it was 5, it would turn red to tell you might need to break it down, or that's a lot of points. And then task and story roadblocks we also added.
So while we were kind of testing this paired, we also had a window here for best practices. This window basically highlights some interesting practices that we feel come up for DTR students very frequently, and then provides like a gold standard story as well as some food for thought questions that we think students could benefit from. So an example here shows that you can actually have the gold standard story change in reaction to the inputs in the forms here. So the points and the words are based off of sort of your input there, making it easier to just kind of directly copy and paste these into your spreadsheet. And then below we have a couple questions that are sort of higher level, but we want people to think about while they're kind of doing these types of stories. So we're kind of building this list, identifying some best practices here from guides and also from things like the Loft, and just testing these things with users right now.
Okay, so we did the testing with users. So what we noticed for this was that we made them do like a user testing story that for really stories that they didn't know, such as like creating user personas, they really relied on the best practices sheet, which may be good or bad. The Task newspaper said that for like mid, you want to do it mid planning, so maybe we encourage people to only open it when they're in the middle, so they think about it for independent thinking. These two questions were helpful, but as you see in this user testing, that this story text actually answered the purpose of the story, but the outcome is really good for this testing, so that's something that we have to think about. And then finally, our contributions, we started those. So our contributions are, the system contribution is a sprint planning framework that helps scaffolding for promoting high-level planning strategies for novice researchers, as well as highlighting best practices for design-based research in agile SSLR research settings. Technical contributions right now, really specific to ARS, are the word sense disambiguation text matching that we had a few sprints ago to match tasks and stories to each other. And then finally, our conceptual contributions are our high-level planning questions for research, these two right here, right now, reuse strategy for task suggestion, which goes with the word sense disambiguation, and then finally, best practices that present like gold standard stories of how to do tasks and stories to novice researchers.
Thanks, that's everything we have.